Hello, welcome to this Rhino tutorial, and we're going to look at surface modeling in this video. So, what's a surface? I guess let's start with something a bit more familiar. If you've been working through, we can go to the standard bar here and we've got these primitives, and we've used one of these already. It's a box. If I show it shaded, okay, so I've used a solid. Now the only reason that's a solid is if I select it, go to properties, it says closed. If I explode it, it now says 6 open surfaces. So that's the only difference between a solid and a surface, is that a solid is a closed volume, whereas a surface is a two-dimensional plane which hasn't got any thickness. So I can close this off again. I'm just going to type move, grab that, push it there so I know the snaps are all snapped together. So I can select this again and it still says 6 open surfaces, but if I go back to join, joins it together and it's now a closed poly surface. Notice it said a closed extrude before, but that's still seen as a solid object. So that's what you have to aim for if you can when you're working on it. But let's look at some of these surface tools. There are a number of ways of looking at surface tools. Again, it's been Rhino, there's a few places. There's a surface tools tab which gives you most of the options here in an icon form, or if you go to surface you get a lot of options down here, and we'll work through a few of the more basic ones. It is a very long list and it takes quite a lot to get your head round all of the different options you've got when you're surface modeling. Okay, I'm going to delete that off. So we'll go surface, plane. So probably the most basic one would be a corner to corner plane, where you click once, you click twice, and that makes a flat surface. I'm going to delete that off. Let's do some of the more standard surface modeling moves. One thing I like to reinforce when people are learning a three-dimensional CAD package is there are only a certain number of three-dimensional moves you can do, the basics anyway. So we'll work through them and you'll see them in lots of different softwares. So seeing beyond the software and more to the form that you're creating is what I'm trying to get you to see here. So for instance, if I take a two-dimensional curve and extrude that curve, I get a 3D object. But in the options in Rhino you get this here. Do you want it solid? Now what that does is it puts a top and a bottom to that extrusion. If I said no, I get a hollow box. So those are 4 surfaces. At the moment it's seen as an open extrusion. Again, if I explode that, I can turn that into surfaces. So extruding is one way of doing it. Another way, and I have shown these in previous videos, but okay, so I've created two-dimensional shapes. I've just used the gumball to pull that up. So extruding is one way of making surfaces and solids, as I showed with the option to make it solid. If I type loft and I select those, I get these arrows here which they kind of roughly want to line up. They're both pointing in the same direction. I could drag that around and get a twisted object if I wanted to, but I'm going to leave it roughly where it was. Okay, so that is a loft. So I've had extrusion, we've got loft. Let's do a rotate now. So if I draw a line, actually I'm going to draw this from the side. So I'm going to draw a vertical line. Let's put grid snap on to keep it neat. Do a line like that. You can see in the 3D window how that went vertically because I'm drawing in this front view. And I'm going to do something similar. Draw a line top, draw a line bottom, and then I'm going to put a spline like that. I'm now going to join this line, and this line. Zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. Whenever you've done a join, just best practice, check it has joined together and there weren't any gaps. It says here 3 curves joined into one open curve. So that's right, 1, 2, 3 curves. Okay. Now rotate. If I show you where this is on the surface tools, down here is a rotate called revolve in Rhino. Apologies, I use many different softwares. So select curves to revolve, that's the one I'm going to revolve, and start point of axis, end point of axis. Now I've got a choice of having a full 360 circle, or I can add an angle to get a part of that circle, but I'm going to hit full circle for now, so there's an option for that. So that is a revolve. Okay, so you see we're sort of creating relatively complex shapes out of quite easy curves. Next one we're going to look at is if we drop down the surface one, sweeping with one rail and sweeping with 2 rails. They're very, very powerful and very useful. So let's quickly do those. So if I do maybe, let's do an oval. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to join these up with a spline. So I'm going to grab that base so it's touching it. Now I haven't touched this one with it. I'm going to move that using the move command MO for short. And I'm just going to rotate this so it's a bit more perpendicular to it, if you see. Okay, so that is ready for a sweep one rail. I've got 2 profiles. I could just use one profile if I wanted. I'll do it with one to start with. Surface sweep one rail, ask for the rail first, and then the profile you want to take along it, and I get a tube like that. If I undo that and go sweep one rail again, it wants the rail and then what profiles. Now I can add more than one profile to it. I can make sure that is roughly at the same point as that, so I don't get a twisted form. And there you see it's swept between those 2 profiles. Let's do one more. I'm going to copy that and then tack it to the mid there. Let's rotate that around itself and let's scale that out. Maybe not that dramatic. Okay, so I'm doing this just to demonstrate that with the sweep one rail you can have as many profiles in as you like. You've got one rail line, which is this one, and then I've got 3 profiles. So let's make sure that those all tie in with each other. So I'm on that side, and that side. So you can see, because I went quite wide here, it's starting to struggle and it's got self-intersecting geometry a little bit in there. I might have just about got away with that, but that's not the best. However, you get the idea. I'm going to get rid of those for now. So sweep 2 rails. Let's take that line, copy it from the bottom to the top, Now I'm going to turn on edit points. The reason I've done that is so I can take this and snap it up there, and then I'm just going to play with this top line a little bit and see what sort of a form we get. Okay, that'll do. So I have two rails. Maybe take that down a little bit. There you go. Okay, I've got two rails. So same command, surface sweep two rails, first rail, second rail, profiles. Okay, so you see the top has followed that top rail. So if we go onto the surface tools, let's have a look at some of these ones built in here. Surface from 3 or 4 points. This can be really useful for patching stuff up. I could, for instance, go there to there to there to there. I could have stopped at 3 points, but I can grab these points and fill in. So that was a surface from 3 or 4 points. I could have also used that to put a top on there. However, the faster way of doing that would be to join them all together and then type cap, and that turns that into a solid form. If I select it now, closed poly surface, this one here should say closed poly surface as well. This one will say open poly surface or open surface, but if I hit cap again, it now says closed, and it's put an end on either of them. So cap is a nice one to remember when you're just trying to close off objects. So what else is on here? Surface from edges. So let's see, surface from 2, 3 or 4 edges. So let's see what we can do here. There's one line. I'm not going to use that one. I'm going to do this. Up. And then I only did that to get a center line for that, and I'm going to go like this. So I've got 4 edges. So back to our surface tools, surface from 4 edges, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there you go, I've got a blended form between those edges. Again, that can be really useful if you combine that with the duplicate edge tool, which I talked about, or dupe edge, which I talked about in the previous video, which is under here, curve from objects, duplicate edge. You can patch holes quite easily with that one. Okay, this one here, surface from planar curves. So the clue there is planar, meaning it needs to be flat. So if I did an oval on the floor, and then I went back to surface tools and selected that, it's going to give me a surface there. So it's a flat curve into a surface. I'm going to delete that surface off. I'm going to draw another shape in there. Let's put a rectangle in it. Now if I do the same tool again, but this time I select both, it recognizes that that would be the surface, and that's a patch. So the icon kind of gives you a clue for that. Okay, next one is one of the key ones, and it's surface from a network of curves. Now this is something that we will focus in class, but very quickly. This needs, I'm going to demonstrate this here. Now that line's unnecessary, but I'm going to use that as my mirror line. I'm going to create one shape there. and try and create something kind of similar on that side. Now what I quite like to do here is I like to give myself snap points, because I'm going to be introducing some three-dimensional curves over the top there. So I quite like having these grab points. Make sure intersection snap is on so I can find them grab points. Jump out of there. I'm going to start a line at that intersection. Where's a clearer view? There's a clearer view. And in my 2D view from the side, I'm going to come upwards, start a line again. I just hit my start the line again. I just hit my enter button to do that, and this time I'm going to hold shift and go vertical again to there. Okay, so far I'm going to be using this curve and this curve. The rest of them are sort of scaffolding or guidelines. I'm going to choose this interpolated points again, but this time I'm going to come over the top and snap to those intersections. Okay, so I'm going to be using this line, this line, this line, and this line. This can't be closed, or otherwise this shape doesn't work. We've got curves running in one direction and curves running in the other direction, and that's what this tool needs to work. Like I said, it takes a bit of practice, this tool, but it's extremely useful and extremely powerful once you get your hang of it. Okay, so I'm going to go surface from network of curves. Now it doesn't matter which order you do this in, but I like to do going one direction first and then going the other direction next. Accept all of those, and that's the kind of form I get from that. If I take this all, let's move that out of the way a little bit. I'm going to use that new surface to show you some additional ones. I'm just going to zoom to extents by clicking there with my right. Okay, I get a good view of it from the front. So let's come in here. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to turn off my snaps. I don't want to be accidentally snapping to this. I'm going to just put a little bit of a curve through there. Let's see where that's landed. That's landed there. That's fine. So I can do the rest with gumball. Select it, press Alt and hold, move, let go of the mouse, let go of Alt. That gives me those two. And if I loft between these, I get a surface. So I'm going to use trimming next. I'm going to use this surface and this surface to trim one another. So if we go to the trim command, it says select cutting objects. I can select both as my cutting objects this time. Select object to trim. I'm going to trim outside, so I've still got that surface in there, you can see, and I'm going to trim this top off. So you see how that worked. I had two surfaces flowing into one another, and I used one to trim the other. If I've got two curves on the base of this because it was a surface from network of curves. Now if you remember a few minutes back, we had the option to surface from 2, 3 or 4 curved edges, so I can use that to patch that base in. And if I joined that, holding my shift to add to my selection, and again 3 open surfaces, if I hit join, I've got a closed polysurface again. So that works quite well. Another thing to show will be editing surfaces once they've been made. If I select this surface, for instance, I'm going to explode that out actually. Get rid of those caps. So I'm going to select that surface. From the standard toolbar here, we can turn points on. Now we get a lot of points there and we can edit them. So I'm going to do this really rough and ready to start with. I'm just going to left to right select a small group there. I can grab them and I can pull them out. You can break your object if you're too severe like that, because I've now got self-intersecting geometry. But that, if I hit escape and then hit cap, it's still going to be seen as a closed poly surface because I didn't take it too far. So turning on the nodes now doesn't work, if you notice, because it's a closed thing and it's seen as a solid now. So I would have to, if I wanted to do more edits, I have to explode that out. I needn't take these caps off now because it's exploded, so it's not seen as a solid, and I can do further edits. Like this. Okay, so that's worth having a play around. Make yourself some surfaces and then start playing around with those. One of the things you can do, again, I capped this, so I'm going to explode it. If I take this object for instance and I turn on points for it, I've got a lot fewer points than I did on here. It's a lot more simplistic an object, which makes it more editable smoothly. The more objects you've got, the lumpier it gets. So you see how I get a really nice smooth pull out of that surface. But I can also rebuild. So selecting that, hit rebuild. I can change the number of points. I can have it much less or more depending. So let's go 5, 5 and see what that does. That simplified the shape a lot because it has a lot less points to curve around. If I turn on my points now, you see I've only got a few of them. I'm going to undo that, type rebuild again. This time I'm going to go 15, 15. Hit points and I get a lot more points. That makes it more editable. I can take this one object for instance there and pull it out. One of the things that works really well with Rhino, but it takes a little bit of methodical thinking, is using the history tool, record history. Okay, so how this would work is, say I'll just do a simple one like a loft. Now before I go to the loft tool, I'm going to record history. Select these objects, loft, and I get that. So what's the difference? Record history is turned back off again because I've just finished the function. If I take that curve though, because this loft was made out of that curve, if I make any changes to that, the loft changes. So history binds the curves to the surface that you've made, so making it editable in the future. So okay, I can show you another use of record history. I'm just going to put a line on the floor as a mirror line. Now I'm going to turn on record history using mirror. Select the objects. I'm going to take all of those. Now let's turn back off again. But if I now make a change to this, I get a change to that as well. So you can do this cascade of histories or a hierarchy of histories. Sometimes the history will break, but again that can be quite a powerful use of the record history tool. Okay, so that's it for this video. Please find the next one. Thanks very much.